Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange Podcast. Stories by leaders for leaders to help you raise the bar on your own excellence, to release the potential inside of you. Now, here's today's podcast. Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange. This is Season 2. We broadcast live on Facebook. You might be watching us on a replay. You might be watching us live. You might be listening to the Nonprofit Exchange on your smartphone, your device, in a podcast. So we've got a timeless subject today, like we try to have most of the time. Russell, this is going to be about grants. Now, you know a little bit about grants, so I bet you're going to come up with some really good questions for our guests. How are you today, my friend?
It's another wonderful day here in Denver, Colorado, and hey, that's the way to rev up the resource engine for your nonprofit is to get grants. And Beverly's the grant guru. She's going to tell you how to do that.
Russell David Dennis never has a bad day. He's my inspiration. So, Beverly,
yes.
Thank you for being our guest today. Beverly Burgess is known as the grant guru. So start out with who named you that, and then tell us a little bit about yourself. You've had quite a background. You've got quite a background.
Well, I started teaching back in 2016 at a church, a local church, Harvest Baptist Church, for free. I wanted to educate the community about grants, struggling businesses, what was available to them. And then I went on to start teaching at the Orange County Library System. And all my classes were free for 2 years. I just did it out of my own pocket. Then my students collaborated one day when I came into class and told me they had a new name for me. And I said, this better be good. And they said, we have decided to name you, and Shirley Childs was the ringleader on it, the grant guru. And I said, well, why would you name me the grant guru? They say, because when it comes to grants, you know everything, or you know how to find it, and you know how to research it, and you have an extensive background in corporate grants and working at the state level. And so that's how my name came about, and it stuck. But as far as my history is, I spent 12 years with the state of Florida. I worked for Governor Lawton Childs, Bob Graham, Charlie Crist, a little bit of work for Governor Rick Scott. Then I did that for 12 years with the Department of Labor, Employment and Training. The division I worked for was the Bureau of Apprenticeship, where I actually designed grants, implemented programs, wrote them. And then I turned around, myself and my colleagues, we went and got the funding to implement that program. Some of the clients we worked with were NASA, Lockheed, Mark Marietta, JATC, Steelworkers of America, plumbers and pipe fitters. I mean, ABC, we did it all, city and county. And those programs were implemented for high school students that dropped out at 16. They would stay in our program, apprenticeship program, for 2 years. And when they graduated, they had a job with that company. And the state of Florida would pay those businesses over $2,000 a month per student to be in that apprenticeship program, or they would fund them for a number of years. Then I went ahead, once that was, for some reason, they decided to downsize us and eliminate us. I went to work for HUD in the private Section 8 owner arena, helping private owners get millions of dollars to put up multifamily housing, senior housing, veteran housing. I was very good at it, very skilled at it. It was nothing for me to lead with $20 to $48 million. So that's my background.
Those are big numbers. So, Beverly, we have. I'm gonna promote somebody in here to be a talking guest, but there's at least 1.5 million 501c3s out there, and probably you add the membership organizations like chambers and associations, 501c6s,
Yes.
and governments and education and all the others. You have a whole bunch of charitable organizations.
Yes.
Why don't they receive grants? They're thinking we're going to get grants, but they're not.
Well, it's not that they can't receive the grants, it's that the fact that a lot of them don't understand the paperwork behind the grant. There's a lot of steps to just, implementing your company and receiving a grant. You have to do the paperwork with the state of Florida EIN number. A lot of the nonprofits don't know they need a DUNS number and that they need to register with sam.gov. There's a lot of steps to it. And so when they start a nonprofit, they think, okay, I'm registered with the state, I have an EIN number, and I'm 501c3 certified. They think that's the end. But there's other ingredients, it's like baking a pie, that go into that pie, so when you apply for the grant is awarded. Some of them don't know that about capacity, that they need to have capacity. It's like a resume of what has your nonprofit done in the community? How many people have they helped? Because, 20 years ago, this was not asked for. Now, there's a grant scoring system. They score you between 1 and 100 on certain things. And, capacity is real big because they want to know, okay, if we give you $15 million, what are you going to do with this money and how are you going to be accountable for it? I've even had some nonprofits tell me, oh, we've done everything. Find out they don't even have a bank account. I said, you got to have a bank account. They don't send a check in the mail. They wire the funds in. The funds are wired in through the WAS system. And, I've had people argue with me and say, oh, can I put it in my personal account? I said, no. The funds have to stay separate. When you start a nonprofit, the funding and the accountability has to stand on its own. I had a young lady that got $12 million. And when we went to the bank and I had to show her how to do things, she literally passed out in SunTrust. She didn't know how to handle that kind of money. So then that becomes a part of financial wealth. You don't get $12 million and decide to go shopping for Gucci and Prada. No, it's the nonprofit's money. It has to go into the bank account.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and typically, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, there's an accounting process. You have to report back about the impact of your work.
Yes.
So this capacity piece, I think there's another component I'd like to probe a little bit. I find that a lot of the nonprofits that I see don't have a clue about where they're going, like they haven't built a plan, a strategic plan. And it would seem to me that you need that to be able to get the money. So talk about that foundational work they need.
Well, strategically, I encourage all nonprofits. If you don't know something, ask the experts like yourself, Hugh, Russell, Dana that's on here. Is it Dana? Or,
Yeah.
The other person that's on here, and partnership with people that are good at this, because capacity will weigh in for your grant at least 40 to 50%, because they will ask that question. Strategically, have a business plan. Know where you're going in a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10, 20. Okay, after you retire, who's going to pick up the reins or the bar and say, I'm going to carry on for Hugh Ballou? You got to know this information. And if you don't know it, I teach classes on this. I teach people that it's not about just the paperwork. It's strategically laying this out every single day as to how you're going to do this and where it's going to go. It's like driving a car. If you don't drive in a straight line, you will go off a cliff, okay? We don't want you going off a cliff. We want you to stay in the straight line.
Stay between the white lines. So Beverly, in our work, Russell and Dana Olivo is in Orlando. She's down in your neck of the woods.
Okay.
And she's a strategist. She's also marketing. So it's her company's Market Academy, but Dana and Russell are part of the Cinevision team. And I think we're probably going to adopt Beverly. She brings a different expertise to us. And we're just to be transparent, we're talking about Beverly doing some work for Cinevision in the grant space. So we're all learning. And Beverly, we have a very good group of we call them wayfinders, because we work with the nonprofits to help guide the way. Rather than giving them all the answers, we help them find the right answer and the next right answer for them and build their capacity.
Correct.
And so we recently got acquainted. One short conversation with you. I knew you knew your stuff, and so I wanted to have you share with other people. But I also wanted to be very transparent that we're talking about working together as well. Let me introduce here down in Orlando, Florida. Dana is one of the experts on our team, and she and I are working on some projects together. Russ and I have been working together for many years. Russ had hair and I had dark hair when we started. See what happens when you work with me, you'll lose your hair. But, and so we find a lot of organizations haven't thought through just what you're talking about. So we make a differentiation. A business plan is a financial document that you give to a funder, and a strategic plan is more robust. It's your nuts and bolts of where you're going to go, how you're going to get there. It's an operational plan. And,
Right.
and in CenterVision, we've created a very special format for strategic planning we call a solution map. So it's a fundamental strategic plan, but it's a solution map with some very specific rubrics for nonprofits. So the top reasons that nonprofits don't get grants, I'm imagining number one is they don't ask.
They really don't. And I find it so strange because working for the state of Florida, we dealt with corporations that have money to give away. And the rule of thumb is when Obama was in office, he put it on the books. If they turn a profit and they don't give back to the community, they get hit or taxed 55%. I get calls from corporations every day saying, you know, we have some funding, Beverly, we would like to contribute to someone in the community that's doing the right thing, you know, that has dotted their I's, crossed their T's. And I just don't give that information out freely. I want someone that when I do recommend you, you know where you're at, where you're going, what you're doing, the whole 9 yards. A lot of these, you know, small nonprofits and even some of the big ones have kind of lost their way on that. And corporations tell me all the time, we have money, but nobody ever asks. Just like banks have the CRA grant, the Community Reinvestment Act. The banks can give away up to $200,000. SunTrust has one form you have to fill out. Do you know they told me nobody ever come in here and asked for it?
Oh, my word.
Banks have that. Obama put it on the books. I even researched stuff going back to 1978 that is on the books, still on the books to this very day. Public information that people just don't ask. So if you don't ask, you don't get it.
Oh my goodness! So there's a list of reasons why nonprofits don't get funded. They don't ask. They don't have an expert who knows. Well, you need to know where the money is, Beverly, but I also think you need somebody that's got the relationship and the understanding of how to communicate with the funder, right?
Right, how to build that relationship, you know. I mean, if you go into banks like SunTrust, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, you know, all these banks have access to this information. And if you ask them and start building that relationship, they will give. But on the other hand, you as a nonprofit need to have your documents, everything ready to go in place. Who's on your board? What is your capacity? Where are you going in 5 years? You know, if you don't know the answer to the question, get with someone that can direct you or come up with a solution map, and you navigate that. And you know, what I started doing with my students, when I teach a class, I give them all a notebook. And it's 69 cents at Office Depot. And they said, why did you give us a notebook? I said, you know all that work you're doing? I want you to put it in the notebook, and I want each section off. I want you to be able to tell me within the next 90 days what you've completed, the information you have, what you've done, because that's the roadmap. I don't want you scrambling, not knowing. So when they pick up that notebook, all that information is in one book.
Yeah, you know what? We got that same methodology. Yeah. In graduate school, I kept my notebooks down at the University of South Florida, and I used that the rest of my career because I made these resource books. And our methodology that people learn, we have them printed out. We don't give them the whole book, and print it out, and they put it in their workbook. Russell has courses. Anna has courses. So we're looking at getting the funding from available grants. Now, people tell me, oh, it's very competitive. There's not enough money to go around. Is that true?
That is not true. There is so much money with the VA. It's just heartbreaking. I work with a person that is a VA liaison between Orlando and DC. The VA had made so many mistakes with our veterans. They have always been 20 years behind. They are at a point now that VA actually wants to do outside contracting because there is a demand not only for veteran and veteran services and to take care of our men and women that have fought for our freedom, but now this is an opportunity for you to build a relationship with VA. If you know how to strategically put your booking, your information together, set a meeting, go in and talk to VA. And I tell my students, I don't care if it takes 10 meetings. When you do get accepted by VA, I can honestly tell you within 5 years, you could retire as a self-made millionaire because it's just that much work with the VA. They are so backlogged, and I hear it from the top brass to the people on the bottom. There is so much work with the VA, it's a joke. And the biggest issue now is getting those mental health services for our veterans and getting them housing. Those are the two issues that VA is faced with right now.
Oh, wow. Wow. So I'm going to ask my other co-host on here to take a turn. Russell. Russell worked with an Indian tribe for 11 years doing fund sourcing and writing grants and stuff. So he knows a little bit about the topic. And he also had a history working with IRS. So he knows both sides of that. So Russell, you got some thoughts or some questions for Beverly today?
Yes, well, it's good to be here and good to see you. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you.
And, grants, a question that is rarely asked is what would make us fundable? What makes us a good partner? What do people we're looking at want from us in order to write us a check? And so, the whole process of going out and looking for grants is called grant seeking. Mm-hmm. And you know this well. What do you think is the best way to approach grant seeking for a nonprofit?
Well, the best way to approach grant seeking is to identify where you're going. Because I get people that want to go in 20 different directions. I say, hold it. Let's narrow this down to one thing. Because they're so excited, they do not understand we got to do this step by step here. So we narrow it down to one thing, and then we complete that, and then we move on to something else. And I think that people get overwhelmed when they see the opportunity. They know they can do it, but they want to add all this food to their plate, and there's no room on the plate. I say, we got to start with one thing. And for some people, it's very disheartening. They don't want me to say that. I said, but would you rather me lie to you or be honest with you? And I'm totally honest because, we got a need for this and we got a need for that. Hold it. We're going to do one thing at a time. Because you got to first get through those hurdles. And I train my clients to learn how to do this process with themselves. And I get a lot of resistance because I had a minister tell me on Sunday, well, I just want you to stay with me forever. And I said, I can't do that. I want you to learn the process. So when you're doing grants, you can identify the next grant and you'll know what you're doing. And a lot of people also don't understand capacity. They don't understand strategic relationships. They don't understand solution maps. So what was not required 20, 25 years ago is now required in the grant seeking world. And they want to do too much. And they get upset with me when I say, we're going to do one thing at a time. Because if you don't understand the beginning, you can't understand the end of it. And I think that's where we're at.
She's done this before, Russell.
Yeah.
And Beverly is another factor. Several organizations going together in a collaborative effort. Like you and I talked to a veterans organization in Florida this morning. If we were talking about working together on something, does that make us more fundable or not?
It does make you more fundable, but I want people to understand when you're collaborating, everybody has to be on the same page. Yes, we're going to agree to disagree, but we have to have common ground and common interests for all parties involved. Because you may get somebody out here in left field that doesn't understand where you're going. You know where you're going, but they're driving off the cliff. And you have to understand also, you have to know when to fire people, because I know when to tell people no and when to fire them and say, hey, this is a collaboration. This is not about you. This is about everyone involved. And if after you sit down and talk to a person, and this is just the strike three rule with me, I come to a decision that if we can't agree to disagree respectfully and collaborate and benefit all parties, then this is not a good relationship. We need to get a divorce. And I've had people say, Beverly, I was wrong, and they want to come back to me, and I'm all for second chances. But collaboration is good because you bring in somebody that may be stronger. Like, I'm not a good marketing person. Well, I'm going to go to Dana for that because I can't market, but I can find you some money. That's my strong point. But when it comes to business plans and marketing, that's not my lane. So I stay in my lane.
That's smart. There's a lot of good sound bites here, Russell.
Loads of them, and it's all about working from your wheelhouse. That's what makes collaboration work, because everybody's working from their strengths so that the sum total of the effort, the group is stronger together than the sum total of the parts. And so here's the thing that I get, and I'm sure you get fairly regularly. People approach you and say, hey, we're a new organization and nobody wants to give us any money. Is there a workaround? How do we handle that particular situation?
Well, I get that question every day, and it's not that they don't want to give them money. It's just like when you start a new job, you have to prove yourself. You have to know what you're doing. Like Publix, for instance. Publix gives away $5,000 a month. Start somewhere. But when you go into Publix and you're dealing with Publix, make sure you've dotted your I's, you've crossed your T's, you've done your paperwork, because the Publix heir is just not going to write you a check. She's looking to write this money off because she's made a profit, okay? But in order for her to justify giving you that money, you have to have your act together. And, the money is there. I mean, I've seen people get small grants for $10,000, $5,000, $20,000. But these new organizations collaborated. The wheelhouse was strong. They had their paperwork together. They knew which direction they were going.
Good. So Dana's been very patient, though. She's got a whole bunch of questions in the queue. So Dana, pick one and share it with Beverly.
Holy crap, I'm dying here, Beverly. So I want to know why we haven't yet, if you're here in Orlando. So we got to get together.
Yes, we got to go to lunch.
Oh, God, yes.
Dinner.
Just so that you know, my background is marketing, but I approach marketing from a different aspect. As a strategist, I am more a seeker. Okay, so what that means is I'm into these companies. Once they have the vision, I work with them to sequence through the events to keep that needle moving forward, as they grow, okay? I work with both for-profits and for-purpose companies, okay? But you talked about the DUNS. You talked about when the paperwork that has to be through the federal government. And I am in a, what we call quagmire, or whatever you want to call it. I'm in a world right now trying to get my SAM registration.
I know about Sam.
I'm telling you, I have been trying to do this for over a year, okay? But yesterday, I'm on the phone with them. They've got my number, and I'm also registered on the event. But what the girl is telling me is says they're so backed up that the only way that you're going to be able to get through is you have to pay a minimum of $500-600 for us to do it, and we'll do it in 14 days. And I'm sitting here and saying, wait a minute, they're not advertising that. They're advertising this is a free service.
SAM is a free service. SAM is a free service through the government. They've never charged in all the years that we dealt with them. So, you know, that's someone trying to piggyback off of SAM and turn a profit. And it's not allowed, because you can reach sam.gov 24/7, 365 days a year. And when I had a problem, when I had a problem, they went in and they fixed it for me right there. And I got my SAM done. And you know what? When I did it, and I teach classes on SAM, I got my SAM done in 1 day, an hour and a half.
So
I'm going to need to talk to you, because if this is one of the hurdles nonprofits or profits have to go through.
Correct.
And we can even get that process done. You can't go for grant money unless you have.
You must be registered in the SAM system. And I'm even working to reach out to the head of the sam.gov. And I told them, because I'm very, I'm just going to be honest with you guys, I'm very aggressive about SAM because I know the inner workings of SAM. So when you have that knowledge,
I'm going to sick you on them for me.
Couple of things. Before we go further here, let's define what SAM is. And Dana, if you check your sound, you've got this double thing. It's echoing. I don't know what it is. Do you have another device turned on? Are your speakers coming through your microphone? We're hearing you double.
I know, but hold on.
Russ and I were muted when it happens. You can't. It's not us. So
go ahead.
Beverly, tell us what SAM is and why this is important.
Well, sam.gov is a registration system that the government came up with, that when you pay your hard-earned money, your taxes, it all goes back to the government, and they create grants, okay? And they put that system in place for nonprofits and for-profit entities to do business with the government. Well, when it first came out, it was not a great system, but now they fine-tune it because of all the social media aspects, technology, and everything. And what SAM wants you to do is register in their system, and they double check to make sure you are a legal entity that can do business in the United States because of all the foreign relationships we have. But what most people do not realize with sam.gov is that, and I've had this question put to me, why is it that when people from China or Japan come over here, they can open up a shop like that? Well, most people do not understand that the U.S. has a relationship with foreign entities. When Hiroshima happened, the U.S. cut a deal that said, okay, this is how we're going to make up for it. We're going to give your people grants when they come to our country. So grants are actually given to foreign people from other countries that we have a relationship with, to come to this country to start a business entity. And most people don't understand that. These are trade relations and agreements that our government put on the books back in the 60s and the 70s to do this with other countries. So the SAM system was implemented to verify that as a business or a nonprofit, you are telling us you have the authority to do business with us.
Sorry, I don't know that one.
That's what the SAM system is. And they will verify it, and they get you to go in and update your information every year. If you don't, when they send you that email from the system, if you don't respond to that email, I believe it's in 7 to 10 business days, they'll go in and delete you out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I still hear your, let me unmute you, Dana. Can you unmute yourself? I can't make it. There you are.
And that's exactly what happened the first time with me.
Yeah.
They went in and they deleted, but I have never gotten that confirmation from SAM.
Yeah, and they'll send you an email, and that's what I do. I tell people, print your emails out that they send you, because they will ask you to fax it. And the SAM system has always been free. They have never charged. The SAM system even gives classes on learning grants 101, believe it or not. They have an onboarding system that will actually go in and teach you how to do a grant with them and how to apply for it, because SAM system used to be hard copy. Now everything is electronic.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So Beverly, from my experience, there's some fundamental benchmarks that need to be in place before a nonprofit even considers hiring you to write a grant. Number one, they have to have a strategy. It clearly defines why they exist, who their clients are, and the kind of work they do. They
Correct.
also have to be they have to have a board of directors that's active. And some private foundations I know require that all the board members be donors as well. And
True.
then there needs to be a very clear statement of the impact of the work that they're proposing. Or am I right? Those are some of the key factors. And if so,
Those are some of the key factors that need to be in place. And when you're looking at people that are going to be on your board, you need to make sure that the people that are serving on your board have the ability to serve, that they're committed to it, that they're just not there for the notoriety. When I started my board, the state of Florida only requires me to have 3 people. Now I'm adding 4 more people to my board because I want that transparency of diversity on my board. And, you know, I mean, I've had conversations with the former vice president of Disney, Lee Cockerell, all the way to county commissioners. And when people believe in your mission statement and your vision, you won't have a problem getting people in a position of power to get behind you, because when you have people in a position of power on your board, that speaks volumes. And believe me, it carries a lot of weight.
now, Beverly, in conversation about some of your veterans projects, and you're an expert on getting veterans funded. And you're expert on federal and state grants. You happen to be in
Yes.
Florida, and you know the player. Now, you used to work for the state, and you had some pretty good education how this all works, and you got to know some of the right people.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I got to know the governors very well because we had to report into them every month. I got to know the heads of the departments that were making the ultimate decisions on whether would the Department of Labor, Employment, and Training be making a decision to fund that program. I actually was given the opportunity, and I was very humbled by it. I co-wrote the daycare portion for the state of Florida when it came to daycares that you see on the books today. I worked under Mr. William E. Livingood. He has passed on, but he was the executive director for the Bureau of Apprenticeship. And he was well versed in how programs should be set up, training should go, development should go. We were talking strategic planning 12, 15 years ago, and nobody was doing it but us. And in how things should be set out, and laid out for nonprofit and for-profit entities. And a lot of people do not understand that just because you're a for-profit business doesn't mean there isn't a grant for you. When a grant says unrestricted, that means anybody can apply for it, I was just approached by the Cherokee Nation. They want to put up 400 units on Silver Star right here in Orlando. And they were like, what do we need to do? Because they did not understand it. So we're putting something in place for them to strategically lay it out, because putting up 400 units for veterans, that's not an easy task, but it can be done.
Yes, Russell, was that you?
No, but here I am. Working with veterans is something that I've done too, So really, I'm thinking back to the old days when you had the Central Contract Registry before they created.
Yes, I remember it.
SAM, which for those that don't know, is a system of award management.
Correct.
And so that's your on-ramp to federal programs, which are generally larger. And so there's a couple of guides. They've got guides out there, and you can call Beverly. She can walk you through the steps. I'm a veteran, so I put my business on that registry, and it wasn't really too bad. We've got some resources here in Colorado that help veterans kind of plug in the contracts. But there is a lot of money out there, so it's really having that process of knowing what it is that you can do and being able to do it, to be able to articulate how you're going to get it done, and teaming with people. There's a lot of money out there, but the problem is that a lot of these entities and agencies have just as much, if not more, trouble getting this money into good projects as nonprofits have getting those funds.
Absolutely.
So talk about some of the relationships that you built with different funding agencies and different types of funding agencies.
Well, one of the funding agencies I had a relationship with was probation and parole. The state of Florida wanted to, when young women and men were coming out of the system, they just did not want them to linger. They wanted to develop a program that would give them a skill set or technical knowledge of how to work in a particular industry. And that is when Mr. William Livingood went to NASA. And then he didn't stop at NASA. He went to Martin Marietta and Lockheed. And he felt very strongly about second chances. And I remember one of the students, David, was in our program, and everybody had given up on him except Mr. Livingood, and he got him in with NASA. David went through our through the whole 2-year training process. And once he graduated, because we would actually go to the site or the school and we will graduate them and hand them their certificate. To this very day, David is still working with NASA 25 years later. Probation and parole, children and families we've worked with. We worked with the city of Orlando. We worked with the county. The city wanted to do a plumbing program to not only give their people more experience, but if you wanted to start your own plumbing company, you were certified by the state of Florida. You had jumped all the hoops. It was just so many we worked with, and JATC, ABC, Pipe Fitters of America, Steelworkers of America. I mean, we did the union and non-union programs. I mean, I am very humbled by what I learned under Mr. Livingood. He was my boss, my colleague, my friend, my mentor, and those were the hard knocks, when computers were just coming online, and you sat down and you read a book and you learned it. So I had the opportunity. I think I've worked with just about every agency in the state of Florida at some point through the Bureau of Apprenticeship Programs.
Is there a difference, Beverly, in private foundation grants and government grants? There's some people feel like government grants have a lot of red tape, a lot of negative to them. Is there a difference?
I mean, there is a difference, and some of the government grants do have red tape, some don't. But the same can be said about private foundations as well, because private foundations want to know, and some of them have gotten very strategic. And when you come before that board in that private foundation, they ask you some hard questions, and they want to know, where's the money going? How's it going to be allocated? What are you going to do with it in the community? Who is it going to benefit? Foundations are just not saying we're just going to give away our money. No, there is a book about that thick that you have to play by the rules. And if you can't play by the foundation rules, you shouldn't apply for the money, because once again, it comes down to transparency and accountability. And because once that foundation's name is on the line, if you go out there and say, okay, I think I'm going to disappear with all the money. And then the foundation begins to wonder, well, who did we give our money to? So foundations have implemented processors to check, double check, and triple check who are we giving our money to.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are endowments attached. People leave their estates to foundations. You're talking billions of dollars.
And there's a lot of it unrewarded, right?
It's a lot that goes unrewarded. Because once again, the paperwork was not done right.
And so it doesn't get awarded to a worthy cause because there was.
It doesn't get awarded to a worthy cause, and then the foundation board has the ultimate power. Mostly 7 people sit on the board, but that one vote can make the determination if that grant or that money will get awarded to that nonprofit or for-profit entity or not, and for how many